Hello, my dear friend, and welcome to the Spiritually Engineered Podcast, where we take a deep dive into the human experience from a spiritual perspective. Come on in, and I invite you to stay. Hello, my dear friend. Hope things are going well. Hope you're having a spectacular, awesome day. So let's get into today's episode, and let's dive into another monthly meditation from the Wayshowers Philosophy. Let's get into the theme of this month, and do a little reading, talk about the theme, and let's get into anything that comes through for today's episode. So currently we're in March 2025. The main theme of the month is resolve. And we're going to be diving into an excerpt on one of the sub-key themes. The key word for that is pure, which goes like this. Pure. To resolve in purpose brings a pure soul. And so that was just a section on that. Before I dive into it, feel free to join, this meditation, in the form of, like, if you can, to close your eyes, get into a comfortable position, and just take this opportunity to go deep within yourself to see if there's anything that resonates with you as I'm reading this. So without further ado, let's get into it. I am moving from one plateau to the next. Spiritually, I do not strive to do this. Rather, I float up to reach them. This is the Spirit's way, floating and rising up. It is becoming pure soul. Every time I grow, I become a little lighter. From time to time, my heart may grow heavy. I may fill it with worry or guilt. Fear lies underneath them, and ignorance underneath that. When encountering new things or re-encountering unresolved lessons, I can end up polluted by concepts rather than purified by them. Until I see the situation as a lesson or opportunity, I will find a way to recreate it. I forget I am perfect for what I have come to do. I forget I am pure in purpose. Instead, I see the situation as pure, and so light I will become. All right, so that was the excerpt from the theme of the month of Wayshowers Philosophy. And let's get into it, shall we? So I want to, as always, when I look at the spiritual theme, I like to look at a definition, get a little intellectual understanding before getting into the feeling part where we talk about experiences. So I'm looking at dictionary.com, and they have a couple of definitions here. So, like, I'm gonna name one here. The first one as a verb, right? To come to a definite or earnest decision about. Determine. To do something. Now they have several other definitions here, but then I want to touch on the verb definition, which is kind of similar to what I just shared, which is, it says, to come to a determination, make up one's mind, determine. And right here it says, often followed by on or upon. And so when we look at that key word resolve, it's an interesting, it's a very, the word that comes to mind that I had shared in the definition, actually, that I feel like correlates so much for me with this word, decision. And to put it in perspective, why I think it's so important and it's such a spiritual quality to make a decision, not just any decision, by the way. It's like making your own decisions, your decisions based on very clear motives, based on, you're not deciding for anybody else, you're deciding for yourself, taking that that in, having that responsibility for yourself, unfolding that inner leadership type of thing. Let me go to the example I was talking about. In many ways, in a lot of ways, in a major way, your life began with the choice, with the decision. Your life on this planet, passing through this school, began with a very clear decision. And thinking about that as a perspective of you have been, you are, you always will be a spirit. You've always been around, but something drew you to come to this planet, this school. Just like I know I had for me and all of us. A lot of us are aware consciously, while many of us are working through our own thing unconsciously. And I think it's an important thing to consider, especially the way I would look at myself as a free soul, as a free agent moving through the universe. Right? I guess even this planet, even planet Earth, we're moving through this school for a period of time, and then we move on. Leaving behind the physical body, the personality, the little things that make up our personality in our current lifetime, or the lifetime that we transition from out of. And I say that also from just thinking about looking at everything that happens in your life, all of it as opportunity, as it mentions in the passage. Everything here being a means to a greater end for yourself. I know for me, as an evolving soul, evolving ourselves in such a way that we liberate ourselves from ourselves, liberate ourselves from the bondage of ignorance. And I think when I think about the energy of resolve, it's such a, man, it feels nothing short of like a powerhouse. You know, um, I'm trying to think of an experience here when I had resolve. I mean, one major one was when I made a decision to leave my previous full-time job working at a school, a small Catholic school, where I actually went to as a student, working as an admin support in the areas of admissions, finance, and operations. I even had a recording because I take the time I wanted to record for future reference, for me to listen to from time to time when I feel guided to. But I basically was like articulating to myself in this recording of just like my decision why I wanted to leave the job. I mean, it had benefits, it was a good cushion, but I made a decision without having no clue what I was going to do next in terms of like the next work opportunities, what's going to happen. I was like fully in like trust mode, which can feel very scary at times. This was definitely one of them. Taking away the financial security that I've had with no plan whatsoever, other than I knew I was going to go out west in the Midwest to Iowa to go see a mentor and a dear friend of mine. To, I had made this resolve. I had this resolve for a little intervention for myself. A pivotal point for myself in my life. Whether it's like changing a job, or perhaps me got into or moving out of a relationship, romantic relationships, or moving into a new physical space. It can definitely be very scary. There's reasons, definitely, like I said, I've had my various transitions that I've gone through myself, that have really was a challenge. But it was a challenge that I met with resolve. And that's the thing. And that's what the ingredient of resilience that exists in each and every single one of us, you including, if you're listening to this, you have resilience. Hell, you are resilience. Let me put it to you like that. You know, I could even almost say just like you don't have resolve, you are resolve. That determination to do something, to decide. In other words, someone with a clear direction, with a clear compass, someone who operates in the place of clarity. I know where I begin and end. I know where my neighbors begin and end. It's like we're really talking about mastery of one's own energy here, my friend. And I think that's a very special, important thing to really consider. And it's something that really takes time to build. When life be lifing and those challenges come up, when those storms show up on our doorstep, you know, in the rain, all, it's to have that resolve, to approach the challenge, the storm, with resolve. In essence, it's like saying, "I will make it through." Before everything kind of transpires or starts to take a turn for wherever it goes, right? Like the moment you sense that you're entering a new challenge, but like staying, but entering it like, oh, I can see the exit and I'm heading there. It's almost like entering a dark tunnel, but approaching it as if you're approaching the light at the end of the tunnel already, before even or as you're diving into the dark tunnel. If that makes any kind of visual sense, my friend. Because it's all about never giving up. Never giving up. And also recognizing that the stuff that comes up for me is there for me. If I start saying, oh, this is happening to me, this is that, I'm fighting the systems of planet Earth. I'm fighting the very universal laws of the universe. I'm fighting it. And all that's ever going to do is create more turmoil and suffering, which is optional, by the way, if you haven't gotten the memo from Spirit. It's optional. Of course, there's going to be growing pains. But to carry myself through that with that crystal clear decision that I will, again, just something as simple as I'm going to make it through. Not having it all figured out, how it's going to go, how I want it to go. It's not about that at all. It's like the willingness to see it through, to see through the challenge. And as I'm saying that, it's like I'm thinking about that quality of follow through. When it's like not just talking the talk, to do this, but it's like also walking the walk as well. And the one thing that stood out to me from this particular passage, when it talks about when it comes to moving up spiritually, when it comes to leveling up and growing and flourishing, the part of the passage suggests it's not about striving for it, but rather floating up to reach that next level. And when I think about that, it's like it's something about I can't force it. When I think about the word strive and why it says I do not strive to do this, because to me there's like an energy of force. And when it comes to growth spiritually and even physically, when you look at the material world, you can't force growth. When you look at the trees and the plants, when you look at other creatures, and when they develop, it all happens gradually and also effortlessly. Think about the word, the other half, the other part of that sentence where it says float up. Float up. There's this sense of ease. There's this sense of effortlessness that I feel and sense in that. So I think with that, it's like especially for like myself, when I sense my own potential and when I feel like I fall short of my own potential. This is one of those moments where I have to remember this. It's not about trying to force myself up, but just to allow myself, remove the blocks, not try to force me to go up, but what's holding me down? What am I allowing to hold me down spiritually? And that could be a question about, is it my situation? Is it a person or a group of people I spend time with? Within myself, what kind of mindset do I have? Do I question some of the mindsets that I have or thinking patterns? The beliefs, I believe, are there to reinforce the good. Now, unless your belief system is something negative, then also question your beliefs. And so our journey, when we're moving through life, we move in a spiral. That's why when you look at, I don't know, well, I'm not, I don't want to assume, but if you were to look at life's lessons and maybe take for a moment perhaps what you're currently experiencing in your life lessons at this time, however old you are and wherever you are at this stage of life. If you were to take the time to observe and notice, like I know for myself, there's a pattern. You might get a sense of that, of a particular pattern of experiences that you seem to be having at this point in time. And it's all for a purpose, it's all for a reason. And that's the spiral. Now we can meet that pattern. If we meet that pattern with the spirit of resolve, that spiral will move up. And what will happen is, as we're spiraling up, the spiral starts to expand, increasing. Think like a tornado, how or when you look at the base of a tornado and as it starts to go up, at least this is how I see tornadoes, it tends to be thinner at the bottom, but then it increases in width, in diameter, I guess, in diameter, when it goes to the top of the vortex of the tornado. Just to give you a visual there of that, what I'm talking about with the spiral, and it expands. But then if you don't have resolve, and this is where the dangers of ignorance comes into play, confusion, worry, guilt, fear, that's that downward spiral. And it can amplify, much like how it can amplify upwards, it can amplify downwards. Can you see how much valuable the power to choose, the power of decision is when I mentioned that example? When you look at the spiral, right? If you spiral up and it can amplify, great. But then also, if you, on the same token, you can spiral down, and if you go down, and it can also amplify, you know? And that's people who deal with depression or some kind of mental challenge, I don't want to, mental illness. I mean, of course, this could also manifest into physical diseases as well, too. But the good news is that even if you find yourself in that downward spiral, you can always create a new pattern of energy, a new groove of energy. The key is, I know, it's like releasing what doesn't serve. And there's many ways of going about doing it. There's different techniques. There's no right way of doing it. But there's releasing it, but then there's also replacing it. Something positive, something constructive, something that builds, right? Think about that upward spiral. I think is very important to do. If we ever want to release anything that doesn't serve us, damn well better be sure we replace it with something. Because it's like in your energetic aura, in your state of consciousness, when you're trying to release a concept, it creates a vacuum. And my understanding of how of the laws of spirit, of the spiritual realm, something will fill it up if there's a vacuum in your aura, in your energy. in your state of consciousness. And that's why it's important to replace it with something. Because otherwise, if you don't replace it, it's almost like saying, if you don't decide for yourself, if you don't make a decision, someone else will, conscious or unconscious. Because it's like navigating this planet. What I've come to understand is like navigating through currents, right? Imagine yourself like on a canoe, and you're going down rapids, and then the rapids at different parts of the river taking you all types of ways. And for those of you that don't know, rapids meaning like sections of the river where it's fast moving water, right? And you're going down on a canoe, and this is definitely something I've learned when I was during my college days in my outdoor adventures leadership development as an instructor, but and also as a trainee. When I got the training myself, of the importance of being decisive. In that context, if I'm not very decisive in terms of where I go with the canoe, or even when I'm in the water where I had to practice learning to be comfortable in rapid white water. Of course, I had a life jacket, and there were techniques to be able to make sure I can navigate the currents, making this conscious effort to decide and be like, okay, where am I going? Where am I going to go? It's like, it's all so quick, right? It can be such a quick situation to be in. But it's like, I mentioned that example because in this context, if I don't decide, if I don't make a decision, and if I get passive in that moment, then I make myself mercy. I'm at the mercy of the weight of the currents of the river. And the river's not going to feel sorry or bad or nothing. The river's going to go river. River's going to go flowing. So I got to decide. And so in my decision in navigating those waters when I had the training, that's working with the river. Because I can fight it and be like, oh, why rivers is doing this to me? And da da da. And there's a version that people do that in their own situation when they're fighting the experiences they're having rather than listening and working with. Okay, what can I do now? Making that decision. And I guess when I going back to that example of like with the being in the water or navigating white waters, the rapids, the decision for me is like I'm making a decision to look out for myself, my own personal physical well-being. That was my resolve there. To make it through the objectives of what my instructors were teaching me in those moments when I was learning with my other fellow trainees, student instructors in training, working all together, and this is part of why, we always, before we even get out in the field, to come together in terms of like our goals and our mission, and I think the resolve works in tandem with it. It's almost like this building each other. So it's like to have resolve to break it through a challenge. It helps a lot to really clarify the mission. What's the goal? Purpose. The power of purpose. Power of purpose. Having that clear. It's almost like if you have a good, clear sense of a purpose, not just an intellectual idea, but you have a feeling behind it. It's like something you feel within your heart. That feeling of resolve, it comes effortless. When you operate from that sense of life purpose, when you dedicate yourself to living your life purpose, that resolve is just like, it just activates easily. It's like, it's almost like it's like I don't want to say, I don't know why fail safe switch or something like that when it comes to mechanical things. But like, it's like when a challenge comes up, it's like, all right, my resolve turns on. Boom. Your resolve turns on. Boom. Just in the nick of time. Right? Like that right there is a good place to be in. And this is something that takes practice, and it takes Like, and I'm saying this not to say that I'm perfect. Like, trust me, there are moments where I'm like, fuck, I'm like, I don't think I have resolve, or all this, that, and it's like I'm caught up in all types of things and all this stuff, and it happens, and that's okay, and that's okay. Let me make that perfectly clear. And I mean, there definitely have been moments when I didn't have resolve, when I was going through my emotional stuff. I think we have those moments when we're just like, just hit with the experience, and it just like, oh man, I'm just like this feeling of someone just hitting a square in the chest like a blow. But for me, when I had that experience a year ago, but then it was that moment when I was on the ground, when I had that resolve to say, I'm getting back up. I'm getting back up, because I don't quit. I say it because it's part of my innate value. It's part of my own innate standard. I don't give up. My spirit guides don't give up on me. They're all in and committed. Your guides, your angels, they're so in there and committed to be there with you to the end, to the point where the contract between you and your helpers has been fulfilled and complete. And in which case, my understanding of what happens after that, you go your separate ways. Free agent in the universe. But anyway, sorry, I feel like I kind of went off on a tangent there. But I mean, a lot of it is just very important. Even for myself, it's a good reminder. To carry myself with resolve is the most powerful thing that I know I can do. I know you can do for yourself. And that's the big takeaway, is like that why behind everything you do. What's your why? Why do you do what you do? And if you find yourself not sure, take some time to sit with yourself and do some digging. Reestablish your why. It's never too late. Want to be considered those that are kind of just wandering through life and are not sure. That's a suggestion. Find yourself. Find yourself. That from experience, that can lead to getting that why, your why, very clear in your heart. And when you have that clear in your heart, when you feel it, you're like an eagle flying up in the sky, just out there in the vastness space of the sky, the endless sky. So much room to breathe in, so much space to play in. I see the eagle as a very powerful spirit animal, as a powerful one, because it definitely the spirit of freedom and personal power. And so I think I'll leave it here, my friend. I think it's some questions to think about, to consider connecting with your resolve. What helps you make it through the storm? What's your why that enables you to keep on going on day in and day out, day in and day out, day in and day out? What's your why? And just thinking about that is even a more important reason why to have purpose, because the nature of this game of the routines and the cycles. Otherwise, you can get caught up in it without purpose. We get caught up in the routines, and it just becomes this energy of just existing rather than just living. That's not what life was meant for us. That's not the kind of life that's meant to be available to us. What's available to us is having a fulfilling, adventurous, exciting life. New endeavors, covering new grounds. Yes, there's going to be some challenges. Yes, there's going to be growing pains. But to be able to just dance in the rain, That's what, in essence, we're all spiritually engineered to do. This is actually hits home in terms of like the mission and the spirit of this podcast and why I do it as well. And I'm still working on refining it even better for myself when I share and do these episodes. But it's like really tapping into, we're all spiritually engineered for success, for resilience, for resolve. We're designed by it. Effortless ease by design. So I hope I gave you something to think about, something, and yeah, definitely invite you to check out the meditation. The excerpt that I read, you can read it in the show notes. I have it there available. But if you want to read the full meditation where it goes into other sub-key themes related to that word, to take it even further, I invite you to check out my show notes. It'll take you to a page where you can, it's a membership that's required uh, to be able to access the full meditation. But you also get a whole bundle of resources from connecting to a community of other like minds who care about their personal growth, and also some tools and techniques and home study programs for your own personal development as well too, to help you, give you some guidelines, some kind of direction, something to work with to help you find yourself. If you find yourself like, I'm not sure what the heck to do, I don't know, and again, that's okay, it's not your fault. No reason to be so, to be upset about it, because I know I would, you know so I share some experience. But I have my resource. No, feel free to check out the resources in the show notes here. I always post them for every podcast episode. They're available for anybody who's curious, who's looking and searching, to be able to aid in everybody's own search. So, if you want to be able to learn, even just like if you want to build more resolve in your life, to build that, to be a more decisive person for yourself, to take more responsibility for yourself, I invite you to take out the resources I have in the show notes here. And if you continue following me in my journey, I'm working towards being able to provide, a service for other people, to show more, to go beyond the sharing. Well, that's going to be part of it. But I'm working on building something for other people to take away from, so that they can apply more practically in their lives. Just a little tidbit, little sharing, a little deep personal share from me on where I'm at right now. So if you're at this point in the episode, just a little personal sharing there. But feel free to check out those show notes. And I always try to provide and share things that I know that are very beneficial. And I myself, utilize the subscription, the services myself, and I work with it as I move through the month, whatever month that we all go through collectively. So it's moving with purpose, with that sense of intent, moving through a school, life curriculum, knowing that class is always in session. In session, having fun. So if you made it this far at the episode, thank you so much for your precious time and attention. And this has been another episode of Spirit Engineered. I'm your host, Alvin Zepeda, signing out. And as always, my dear friend, take care.